Hi BookTube, it's Thea, and this is going to be my May TBR. So for the month of May, I have a total of 7 books and 2 graphic novels that I would like to go ahead and read this month. It is a lot for me to put in a monthly TBR, but I have a special event that I would like to read these books for, so I will just dive right in and show you guys what I would like to read for May. The first thing that I'd like to read in May is Everything by Nicola Yoon. This is a YA contemporary about a girl who is basically confined to indoors because she has a compromised immune system. She's basically allergic to everything, and so she has always been inside. Her mom works as a nurse and has made the house acceptable for her. It's like they filter the air and all of these different things. And then one day, as the YA contemporary goes, she meets a boy and that she decides that she wants to live. So this is really short, coming out this month, and I definitely wanted to give it a read, and I've heard that Nicola Yoon's writing is just absolutely beautiful, so I'm really excited to dig into this. The book that I would like to read this month is The Black Prism by Brent Weeks. This is the first book in the Lightbringer trilogy, I want to say. I'm not sure if it's a trilogy. I think it's a trilogy. I don't know much about this book. I know it follows our main character named Gavin, who is the Prism, who's the most powerful man in the world. He's a high priest and an emperor, a man whose wisdom, power, and charm are all that preserves a tenacious peace, yet prisms never last, and Gavin knows exactly how long he has left to live. 5 years to accomplish 5 impossible goals. It sounds really great. It's epic fantasy. I'm trying to get into more adult fantasy, and Brent Weeks is actually going to be at Phoenix Comic-Con at the end of this month, and so I am super excited to be able to pick this up and give it a read, and if I like it, then to have him sign my copy and get to meet him. And I just love being able to meet authors at local conventions and getting them to sign copies of books, so I'm hoping to really enjoy this. The next book that I would like to read is A Conjuring of White by V.E. Schwab. I read first and second book last month and absolutely loved them, so I cannot wait to dive into this. This is a chunker, but I'm hoping to get this finished before the end of the month, as Victoria is also going to be at Phoenix Comic-Con, and I would love to be able to have her sign my copies. This is the library copy that I'm reading that I'm going to be using to read it, but then that way when the end of the month my copy should come in by the end of the month, and that way I can have her sign my copies. But I am super excited to see where the rest of this series goes. I absolutely love Victoria's writing, and I'm really excited to dive into this. The next 2 books are by another author who's going to be at Phoenix Comic-Con, and that is Full Moon and Grave Peril, both by Jim Butcher. This is the second and third book in the Harry Dresden files. I read the first book a couple years ago and found it was okay, but I've heard that they continue to get better, so I wanted to give them a read before I meet him at the end of the month. And if you don't know, this series is an urban fantasy that follows our main character, Harry Dresden, who is a paranormal investigator, and it just follows the cases that he goes through and his life as a paranormal investigator. And I've heard that this series just continues to get better, so I definitely wanted to pick these up before I meet him at the end of this month. The next book I'd like to read is by another author who's going to be at Phoenix Comic-Con, and that is Red Rising by Pierce Brown. I have currently had this book on my shelf for about 2 years. It's one of those I've always wanted to get to it, just never was in the right mood. But then when I heard that Pierce was going to be at Comic-Con, I knew I had to pick this up and give it a read. I've just started it. I'm only about 50 pages in or so, and it's a little slow, but I'm enjoying it so far. And I knew that I wanted to read it before I meet Pierce and had him sign my copy of the book. So I definitely knew I had to pick this up before Comic-Con. Nothing but great things about it, so I'm hoping I will enjoy it. Next thing that I'd like to read is actually a graphic novel series that I have been working on, and that is Fables. This is volume 3, Storybook Love. I have owned this one for a couple years. I read the first and second volume 2 years ago and owned this, and I didn't want to pick it up until I had a couple more volumes, but then I found out that Bill again was going to be at Phoenix Comic-Con, so I knew I had to give this a read before I meet him. So I want to go ahead and pick this up, and luckily these are super short. They're very fast reads. I can sit down and read this in one sitting, but I love the artwork on this, and Fables is just a really fun graphic novel series. And if you don't know, Fable follows the fantasy storybook type characters like Snow White and Cinderella. It's kind of inspired, well, I guess Once Upon a Time is kind of inspired from Fables, where they live in the real world, but they don't know, but us humans don't know that they live there, and it's basically just about things that happen and in this time period. So it's very, very similar to Once Upon a Time, but it's a little more graphic. But I love the artwork in this, and it's just a really fun read. And again, I wanted to get this read before I meet Bill at the end of the month. The next graphic novel I would like to read is, again, by an author who's going to be at Phoenix Comic-Con, and that is Chew Volume 1, Taster's Choice by John Layman. I got this last year when I saw it all over BookTube when I first started my channel, and I just hadn't got a chance to read it yet because I always kind of like to pick up 2 or 3 volumes before I sit down and read the one. But then I heard that John Layman was going to be at Phoenix Comic-Con, so again, I figured I'd go ahead and give it a read before I meet him. And I've heard that this is kind of similar to iZombie, where he is a detective who gets psychic impressions from whatever he eats, and I've heard it's a lot of fun, and the artwork is pretty neat on it. The artwork is pretty, I like the artwork. I think it's pretty standard artwork for graphic novels, but I've heard pretty good things about this series, so I knew I wanted to give it a read before the end of the month. And the last book on my TBR is a chunker, and I don't think I'm going to finish it in time, but that is The Amazing Adventures of Cavalier and Clay by Michael Chambon. This book is the book that my book club is reading, and is a chunker. It's just over 600 pages. So this is something that I'm going to slowly be reading all month. And this book follows Joe Cavalier, who's a young Jewish artist, and he has just smuggled himself out of Nazi-invaded Prague and landed in New York City with his Brooklyn cousin Sammy, who's looking for a partner to create heroes, stories, and art for the latest novelty to hit America, the comic book. Drawing on their own fears and dreams, Cavalier and Clay create The Escapist, The Monitor, and Luna Moth, inspired by the beautiful Rosa Sachs, who will become linked by powerful ties to both men. So it sounds like a lot of fun. It's about, comic books, which I really like, and takes place in New York City during the 30s. It sounds like it's going to be a great read, but it's definitely a chunker, so it's going to take me a while. And it did win the Pulitzer Prize as well, and I am really excited to dig into this. So here's my very large May TBR. Let me know in the comments below what you're reading, if you've read any of these. As always, I have all my social media down below to get in contact with me. If you like this video, give it a big thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye!